Tonight on Primetime, a royal visit with more than ceremony behind it. King Charles III arrived in Washington as tensions over Iran and wider security challenges put the alliance under renewed focus. Ceremony on the surface, strategy underneath. Well, good evening. The so-called special relationship is back in focus. King Charles III and Donald Trump used a high-profile state visit to underline alliance and shared security priorities, even as wider geopolitical pressures continue to test transatlantic unity.
Britain's King Charles is in the US for a high-profile state visit aimed at strengthening ties between the two countries. He arrived at the White House alongside US President Donald Trump, marking the start of several official engagements. The trip comes at a sensitive time, with tensions over the Iran conflict and Washington's criticism of London adding strain to relations. The visit marks 250 years since American independence. Talks were held in the Oval Office with senior officials present, but no details were released. Later, King Charles addressed the US Congress, saying the United Kingdom and the United States remain strong allies committed to democratic values.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we meet in times of great uncertainty, in times of conflict from Europe to the Middle East, which pose immense challenges for the international community and whose impact is felt in communities the length and breadth of our own countries. We meet too in the aftermath of the incident not far from this great building that sought to harm the leadership of your nation and to foment wider fear and discord. Let me say with unshakable resolve, such acts of violence will never succeed. Whatever disagreements we may have, we stand united in our commitment to uphold democracy, to protect all our people from harm, and to salute the courage of those who daily risk their lives in the service of our countries.
The day concluded with a state dinner at the White House, where President Trump said the two countries remain united on major security challenges, including Iran's nuclear program.
And we're doing a little Middle East work right now, too, if you might know. And we're doing very well. We have militarily defeated that particular opponent. And we're never going to let that opponent ever, Charles agrees with me, even more than I do, we're never going to let that opponent have a nuclear weapon. They know that, and they've known it right now very powerfully.
The engagement highlighted unity between the two allies, even as policy differences persist. In a gesture highlighting historical ties, King Charles also presented President Donald Trump with a bell from the World War II-era submarine HMS Trump during the visit.
Okay, let's bring in AnewZ's Katie Wilson now, has been following the state visit and the key moments in Washington. Katie, as always, great to have you with us. A pretty incredible speech by the King, but we'll talk about that in a moment. Let's just look at what's happened so far, though. Just walk us through the key moments.
Yeah, so yesterday was kind of the centerpiece of this whole state visit to the United States. So we had all the ceremonial pageantry, but also that diplomacy that we were seeing just in that clip there. So the King and Queen were formally welcomed at the White House by President Trump and the First Lady in a ceremony complete with the military honours, the red carpet, the official reception that you'd expect from a state visit. So there was all of the usual optics, but there was political significance here as well. So this state visit was penciled in as a celebration of America's 250th anniversary, of Anglo-American ties, of the special relationship, but it's ended up becoming a bit of a rescue mission. The current state of US-UK relations is strained due to the UK's reluctance to get involved in the war with Iran. So the royals were sent to sort of warm the temperature a bit. We know Trump is a president that likes this. He enjoys the idea of a king, all of the pageantry. So King Charles held a private meeting with President Trump in the Oval Office. That was followed by further talks at an afternoon tea. And we're expecting those discussions to have touched on a range of issues, including transatlantic security, trade, and the ongoing fallout from those tensions in the Middle East. But the most notable moment came when Charles addressed a joint session of the US Congress. Now, he's only the second British monarch to do so, after Queen Elizabeth II did so in 1991. And that was following the fall of the Berlin Wall, to give you a sense of how significant politically these moments often are. So the day concluded with a state dinner hosted by President Trump at the White House, attended by senior officials, business leaders, cultural figures. So yes, we had the royal spectacle that we usually have from a state visit, but there was this diplomatic balancing act there to try and reinforce the stability in the transatlantic relationship.
Yeah, and as you say, that speech to Congress was incredibly historic in a sense, Katie. It seemed to go down quite well, didn't it? What were the key messages that the King got across?
Yes, I think everything landed, and it did seem to go well, and broadly all analysts are saying that it probably hit the goals that the royals were trying to do there. So yeah, the goal was to rekindle that relationship between the US and the UK, as I say, strained because of that reluctance to fully back the US-Israeli war in Iran. And we saw Charles try to ease those tensions in his address. So he spoke of reconciliation and renewal, and he said that characterized this centuries-long relationship between the UK and the US. And he dived right into talking about times of great uncertainty that confront both the US and the UK, so conflicts in the Middle East and Ukraine, which have both been sources of recent contention between Trump and Starmer. And he also noted the threat to democracy that's presented by the kind of political violence that we saw in Saturday night's White House Correspondents' Dinner. So from there, the King pivoted to talking about the fact the US and the UK haven't always seen eye to eye. And that was essentially just a setup for his conclusion that these two countries, when they're in alignment, can actually do great things. And the King spoke of the Atlantic Partnership, but interestingly, he noted that the only time NATO has actually mobilised in defence of one of its member states was after the 9/11 terror attacks by Al-Qaeda there. So, you know, if we think of how Trump's rhetoric in regards to NATO, very interesting that he got that in there. Charles also mentioned his time in the Royal Navy, again an entry point to remark on the benefits of security and intelligence relations between the two countries and America in Europe. And again, this comes as Trump has mocked the British Navy, calling their ships toys and saying the aircraft carriers didn't work. So sort of interesting subtleties going on in this speech, I think. He even found an avenue to mention climate change. As we know in the UK, it's been a long time concern of his, and it's formed much of his work. And one of the biggest questions surrounding this speech was whether Charles was going to reference Jeffrey Epstein and address the late sex offender's victims, not least given the scandal surrounding his brother Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. He didn't. The closest he came was a vague reference to the need to support victims of some of the ills that so tragically exist in both our societies today. So for those who had been calling on the King to meet with Epstein survivors whilst in the US, that comment alone didn't really cut it. But I think overall, the King was successful in breaking the ice, we can say.
Yeah, and beyond the public, Katie, we know that the two men have met privately. I guess by virtue of the fact it's a private meeting, we don't know exactly what was said, but there does seem to be an influence that the King has with President Trump, doesn't there? An ability perhaps to influence him in a way that others can't.
Yeah, and I think it all comes with Trump enjoying that royal pageantry. Obviously, it's something Americans are fascinated with, the royal family, because they don't have one. And I think Trump plays a part of that. He loves the idea of a king and a queen. And I think that sort of royal charm actually really works on Trump. And obviously, the UK diplomats know that that works on Trump in a way that it maybe wouldn't with some other leaders. But let's chat about that Oval Office meeting, because we saw the pictures just there of Charles and Trump sat together, but typically that's done in front of the world's press. Typically, obviously, we'd see the images, but also we would watch the president sat alongside heads of state, prime ministers and presidents in that room. But Trump is also known for a diplomatic gaffe in that room. So remember the Pearl Harbor joke in front of Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, the reference to rigged elections in front of Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. But the main concern that the UK diplomats had was, remember the scenes back in 2015 when Trump berated the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in front of the world's press. And this is why the British officials had really been pushing for these talks to be private. They wanted to avoid any kind of Zelensky-style clash. And Trump is an unpredictable president and relations are strained at the moment. So I don't think we could put it past Trump to have a bit of a diplomatic gaffe there, which is not what the royals would have wanted. So as you say, because of that, we've only got limited details about those private talks and what was on the agenda. A major topic is understood to have been security cooperation, if we look at what sort of officials from both sides have said, particularly in light of the recent Iran conflict and the wider instability in the Middle East. We also expect trade and investment to have been on the agenda as the UK is still adjusting to that post-Brexit climate. But there's also significant interest in what would have been said about NATO and the war in Ukraine. Obviously, King Charles is constitutionally neutral, but he has consistently used his public speeches to underline support for Allied cooperation and democratic resilience. So whilst we don't know for sure what was said, I'm sure Charles was using the symbolism of the monarchy to reinforce that special relationship, and obviously we know that works on Trump.
Yeah, of course. You mentioned the unpredictability and the tendency for strong statements, Katie. Some pretty strong words on Iran, wasn't there? What exactly was said?
Yeah, so that all happened at a state dinner which was after this Oval Office meeting, which it actually came in quite significantly. So Trump said, we're doing a little Middle East work right now and we're doing very well. So Trump did talk about what was going on in Iran, but interestingly, Trump insisted that Charles agreed with him that Iran should never be allowed nuclear weapons. And again, this came after the talks in the Oval Office. Now, as head of state, the king should be above party politics and remain neutral. So those comments there were likely to have caused some embarrassment among royal aides that Charles's views have been made public. And as we're seeing, no one is immune to a diplomatic gaffe from Trump. Now, a Buckingham Palace spokesperson has said the king is naturally mindful of his government's long-standing and well-known position on the prevention of nuclear proliferation. So a nice save there from the Buckingham Palace press office. And I think the UK is generally just viewing that as a bump on the diplomatic road. And, the jokes landed, the warm words resonated, and the pageantry all looked good on the evening news. So I think the question now is what from the king's visit to the United States is going to sustain and translate into politics. Will we hear Trump not criticising Starmer in public anymore? Who knows? Maybe that's too much to ask just from this visit, but obviously it'll be interesting what this will mean for the situation in Iran, the transatlantic alliance, Ukraine.
Okay, Katie, so what can we look forward to next? What's planned and what have we got to look forward to over the days ahead?
Yes, so the King and Queen have travelled to New York as the second leg of the visit has got underway. So they began with a visit to the 9/11 Memorial and Museum, and Charles there paid tribute to the victims and met with first responders, survivors and the family affected. And the King's also due to visit a community urban farming project in Harlem. That's going to be later today, like US time. So that's obviously an engagement that's aligned with his long-standing priorities of sustainability, environmental protection, and it's associated with his public work over the decades. Camilla, she's got a separate programme, so that's centred on literacy and education. So she's attending an event at a New York public library, and that's tying into her ongoing advocacy for children's literacy and for reading. So we're also expecting a meeting in New York with city officials, but I think the remaining engagements are less about closed-door diplomacy, and they're more really what we typically see in a royal tour, like community outreach, culture. Of course, there's that inevitable undertone of soft power there, but I think that the diplomacy in Washington is over for now.
Okay, interesting stuff. We'll follow it very closely. Katie, thank you as always. Thank you. Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at the top business news stories shaping the day with Andy Mioch. Don't go away.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome to AnewZ, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent.
Hello, I'm Jay. That's challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabala. Hi, Candy. One important note to fears. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are recording on the 8th of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent,
Almaty, Kazakhstan,
Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul for AnewZ.
A warm welcome back wherever you're watching Primetime now. Andy Mioch is with us, bringing us the very latest business news stories. Andy, what have you got on your agenda tonight?
Well, Guy, oil prices extended their rally as investors are closely watching for all the developments surrounding the Iran war. EU regulators found Meta breached some of their rules concerning children. Spirit Airlines bailout is reportedly stalled, and there's a couple of stories from the auto and sportswear industries as well. So let's have a look. First up, oil prices climbed again as traders balanced the United Arab Emirates' unexpected departure from OPEC with indications that a near-term conclusion to the Iran war is unlikely.
International benchmark Brent crude futures with June delivery traded 2.8% higher at $114.3 per barrel at 7:18 a.m. Eastern Time, extending gains after notching its seventh consecutive positive session on Tuesday. US West Texas intermediate futures with June delivery rose 3.3% to $103.1 per barrel. The latest move higher comes amid reports that the US will look to extend its blockade of Iranian ports, deepening fears of prolonged disruption through the strategically vital Strait of Hormuz. US President Donald Trump will seek to ratchet up the pressure on Iran's economy and oil exports by preventing shipping to and from its ports, the Wall Street Journal reported Tuesday. Attempts to continue negotiations to end the war appeared to have stalled in recent days. Energy market participants were also digesting the ramifications of the UAE's abrupt decision to quit OPEC, although analysts said the move was likely to have a limited market impact given the ongoing Middle East crisis.
In tech regulation news, the European Commission found Meta's Instagram and Facebook in breach of rules regulating children's access to the social networks. If the preliminary findings are confirmed, Brussels could fine Meta up to 6% of its global annual turnover.
Meta platforms Facebook and Instagram were charged with breaching landmark EU tech rules and must do more to prevent children under 13 from accessing both social networks, EU regulators said on Wednesday. The charges under the Digital Services Act, which requires big tech to do more to tackle illegal and harmful content on their platforms, came after a 2-year-long investigation by the European Commission. The EU tech enforcer said the preliminary findings showed Meta does not do enough to enforce its restrictions against children under 13 from using Facebook and Instagram. It also said that measures to identify and remove them when they do access the services were inadequate. Meta can now review the European Commission's preliminary investigation findings and respond in writing. If the Commission's findings are confirmed by its final investigation, it can fine Meta up to 6% of its total worldwide annual turnover.
On to the aviation industry. Bailout talks for Spirit Airlines have reportedly hit a roadblock. Bloomberg reports that a group of lenders has pushed back on the proposed terms. Now, the Trump administration has publicly backed the intervention in the struggling American carrier, framing it as a matter of saving thousands of jobs.
Spirit Airlines discussions over a potential $500 million US government rescue financing have hit an impasse, Bloomberg News reported on Tuesday, citing sources. A group of lenders, including hedge fund Citadel, is pushing back against proposed terms that could significantly erode the value of their claims and limit recoveries, the report said, adding that the group made a counter-proposal in recent days that has gone unanswered. The news on Spirit's rescue financing hitting a roadblock comes hours after a report said the airline had won the backing of two of its three major creditor groupings to secure a bailout. US President Donald Trump said last week his administration was looking at buying the embattled airline at the right price. If all the Spirit creditor groups agree on the bailout deal, a New York federal bankruptcy court hearing could be held on Thursday.
Next up, Chinese EV maker BYD saw a sharp decline in its first quarter net profit, reflecting a severe impact on automakers' profitability as China's new electric vehicle market entered its slow season at the beginning of the year.
Chinese electric vehicle maker BYD's quarterly profit fell at its fastest pace since 2020, hit by sluggish sales at home and intensifying competition. A stock market filing showed on Tuesday. The world's biggest EV seller, known for its focus on budget models priced under 150,000 yuan or just under $22,000, is under pressure from rivals, including Geely and Leapmotor. BYD's first quarter net profit dropped 55.4% from a year earlier, deepening a 38.2% fall in the fourth quarter, the data showed. Revenue fell 11.8%, extending a declining streak to a third straight quarter. Pressure has mounted as China scales back trade in subsidies for entry-level electric cars and plug-in hybrids. BYD's overall sales declined for a seventh straight month in March, despite sustained strong growth in overseas shipments.
Still with cars, Aston Martin reported another quarterly loss as it struggles to engineer a turnaround under billionaire Lawrence Stroll, who is putting up a further £50 million to ease the pressure.
British luxury car maker Aston Martin on Wednesday reported a narrower first quarter, loss helped by turnaround efforts, and signed a new £50 million funding deal with top shareholder and chair Lawrence Stroll's consortium. The new financing facility with some members of the U-Tree consortium comes amid cash pressures for the legacy carmaker, which has laid off a fifth of its workforce, cut its 5-year spending plan, and delayed production of its electric vehicle technology to recover from hefty US tariffs on imported cars and softer demand in the Chinese market. Aston Martin kept its annual outlook unchanged, but flagged caution around the Middle East conflict after disruptions to automakers' regional operations as the US-Israeli strikes on Iran, followed by Tehran's strikes on the Gulf, sent shockwaves across the region. The carmaker's first quarter adjusted operating loss came in at £56.9 million, compared to £64.5 million loss a year earlier and £71 million that the market had expected.
And finally, in the world of sportswear, German giant AnewZ reported better than anticipated profit and sales figures for the first quarter. The company says it was helped by early demand for football gear ahead of the FIFA World Cup this summer.
Adidas on Wednesday reported stronger than expected first quarter operating profit and sales, helped by early demand for World Cup soccer products ahead of the FIFA tournament in June. Adidas said it front-loaded World Cup products to its markets to avoid many supply and transportation issues. Running gear was also a growth driver, with sales rising more than 10%. The Adidas brand is riding high after its ultra-light racing shoes helped Kenyan athlete Sebastian Sawe become the first person to run a sub-2-hour marathon in an official race in the London Marathon on Sunday. Adidas' shares were up 7% on Wednesday on the robust performance. The shares have fallen over the past year as the company faced US tariffs and cautious consumers, and are still near their lowest level in more than 3 years. Adidas said discipline in not selling too much to retailers was crucial to avoid sneakers having to be discounted in a very volatile retail environment.
That will be all in the business brief for tonight. And I get back to you guys.
Andy, as always, thank you very much indeed. Okay, after the break, the European Union approves a major financial package for Ukraine as leaders meet to discuss security and sanctions. Don't go away. On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
The global defense industry plays a vital role in ensuring national security. In Turkey, companies in this sector strengthen domestic production and enhance military independence.
ISA-based radar, Murat radar. This is fully digital radar. This is new for world. Aselsan today, Turkish technology leader and global technology provider.
I'm Nuray Mustafa. This is One on One.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome to AnewZ, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent. Hello, I'm Jay. Challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabala. Hi, Candy. One important note to this. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on the 8th of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul, for AnewZ.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. The standoff between Iran and the United States is widening beyond diplomacy, with Tehran hardening its position and Washington increasing economic pressure. Well, from sanctions and shipping routes to military readiness and stalled nuclear talks, the confrontation continues to reshape both regional security and global trade.
Iran says the United States can no longer dictate its policies and should abandon what it calls illegal demands. According to Tasnim news agency, a defense ministry spokesperson said Tehran will keep strengthening its military and is ready to share its defensive capabilities with other nations. This comes as US President Donald Trump has rejected Iran's latest proposal to end the conflict, expressing frustration that Tehran wants to delay talks on its nuclear program. According to a US official, Iran suggested setting aside nuclear talks until after the war ends and shipping disputes are resolved. However, Trump insists nuclear issues must be addressed immediately. In a post on Truth Social, he claimed Iran told Washington it is in a state of collapse and is trying to stabilize its leadership while urging the reopening of the Hormuz Strait. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal reports Trump has directed aides to prepare for a prolonged blockade of Iran. The strategy focuses on tightening pressure on Iran's economy and restricting oil exports by limiting shipping access to its ports. Officials say Trump sees this as less risky than renewed military strikes or disengagement. At the same time, the US government has imposed sanctions on 35 entities and individuals linked to Iran's shadow banking network. Authorities accuse them of moving tens of billions of dollars to bypass sanctions and support activities Washington labels as terrorism. In the Arabian Sea, United States Central Command said US Marines boarded a commercial vessel, the MV Blue Star 3. However, they later released it after confirming it was not heading to an Iranian port. Despite an April 8th ceasefire, Iran says it remains on a wartime footing. According to official statements, Iran continues to update targets, train forces, and produce new equipment, citing deep mistrust of the United States. Beyond the region, the Panama Canal Authority says the conflict is already shifting global trade routes, with increased traffic expected to continue until tensions in the Middle East ease.
Well, Iran is also escalating its case at the United Nations, accusing the United States of state-sponsored piracy over seized oil tankers and warning it reserves the right to respond. Well, as military tensions remain high despite a ceasefire, AnewZ's Toraj Shirililo has more from Tehran.
Iran's ambassador to the United Nations, Amir Saeed Iravani, in a letter to the Secretary General and the President of Security Council, stressed Tehran's every right to counter what he branded as the US's brazen act of state-sponsored piracy. The letter, available on the Iranian mission's website, referred to a recent confiscation order of 2 tankers by a US attorney, which the Iranian envoy said constitutes an explicit and deliberate admission of an internationally wrongful conduct. Iravani said that the U.S. bears full and undeniable international responsibility for all consequences arising from these unlawful actions. Meantime, Army spokesman Brigadier General Mohammad Akraminia said on Tuesday that Tehran's armed forces are on war footing despite the ceasefire. According to the state-owned IRNA news agency, he warned that Iran has updated the enemy's target bank in the event of a renewed aggression. In another development, the Minister of Information and Communication Technology, Sattar Hashemi, urged the International Telecommunication Union, ITU, to condemn bombing of Iran's ICT infrastructure in the Israeli-US attacks. He made this statement in a telephone call with Bosan Tijani, the chairman of the ITU Council 2026, during which he called for raising the issue of deliberate targeting of Iran's civilian facilities at the ITU Council's ongoing meeting in Geneva. Toraj Shirililo, Tehran, for AnewZ.
Okay, after the break, plenty more news and analysis. Don't go away.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome out, you're watching Primetime. Let's get more now on where this US-Iran standoff might go next. And joining us is Mostanza Klasra, political and security analyst and editor at the Islamabad Telegraph. Mostanza, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Great to have you with us on Primetime. Tehran seems to be kind of separating the war, the ongoing war, with this issue of the nuclear file, doesn't it? Do you think that's a tactical delay or a sign that it wants to reset the terms of engagement?
Well, I don't see it as a tactical delay. Iran has already clarified so many times at different forums that their nuclear program is just for the peaceful purpose, and I hope, and the same is the red line from the American side as well. So I personally believe that this red line should be met with a flexible kind of thing from the both sides. So currently, both the sides are not showing their flexibility. Both the sides are kind of rigid in their stances. So in that context, Iran is trying to kind of tactically delay its things. So I personally believe that both the parties should have the flexible approach, especially on the nuclear front. Nuclear front. And here, one thing I would like also to mention is that some colleagues and American officials say that Iran should have handed over their enriched uranium to the American side. I personally believe that's a justifiable idea, and Iranians are a very resilient and strict kind of nation, so they will not allow, or they will not accept this kind of gesture from the American side.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You say that you speak there of the famous resilience of the Iranians. Washington, though, building pressure now more through sanctions and economic restrictions. Does that suggest, do you think, the White House is trying to avoid any renewed military action?
Well, no doubt at all. Restrictions and kind of economic sanctions pay a huge negative impact to the economy of any state. But the Iranians have proved themselves that they can still survive despite having a severe kind of economic restrictions or sanctions. So in that context, Iranians know that very well, that they can survive because they have the support of China, they have support from the Russian side as well. So Iranian will these kind of restrictions and economic sanctions would not make any difference. And second, as concerned Americans, yes, they are trying to diffuse the tension with the Iranians, because when we see or when we study the American political environment, so American government is accountable by their public, by their institutions. So they have, I personally believe, the Americans have domestic pressures in their state as well. They will have to be accountable, and they are in fact accountable to their general public, because so many voices are even being generated across America that why did the Trump administration has waged a war against Iranians. This is not a kind of a war of Americans. America is fighting the war on the behalf of Israelis. So these kind of voices are being generated from across America. So yes, you rightly pointed out that America wants to diffuse the tensions, but because America is considered to be a sole superpower of the world, although I personally don't agree with this idea, but still it considers itself as a hegemon of the world, as a hegemon of the region. So it would be difficult for the American government to kind of accept these kind of realities that they want to diffuse it. They will not accept it publicly, but generally, I personally believe America wants to diffuse tension in the Middle Eastern region.
Mostanza, Iran says it's ready to share its defensive capabilities with other countries. Do you think this could be the beginning of deeper military partnerships then in the region?
Well, yes, Iranians have proved themselves during this war. Iranian missile technology and Iranians' other kind of the morale of their armed forces and even morale of their government, despite having having severe kind of losses at the government level, the Iranians have proved that they can still manage to kind of run the government. They will defeat their adversary very well. So yes, Iranians just like when if we look back to the India-Pakistan conflict, when Pakistan actively played its role and Pakistan armed forces kind of they have defeated their adversary despite having the 1/3 of its adversary. So international profile of Pakistan went on upper side. Same is the case, I personally believe, with Iranians, because Iranians armed forces they are resilient, they are trained, and their missile technology in fact have given them a confidence that they are capable to fight these kind of adversaries. And yes, when these kind of adversaries confidence comes in any kind of nations, so the other international community definitely would like to cooperate with them, would like to learn from them that how did they cater the enemy which is considered to be a superpower or which is considered to be a regional power. So yes, the Iranians now in future they will also try to I believe, in my opinion, they will also try to kind of collaborate with different armed forces of the world. And yes, you rightly pointed out, Iranians are building up themselves as a regional, and in fact I would say as an extra-regional forces, extra-regional country.
And meanwhile, President Trump appears to be shifting away from direct military action to a kind of an economic siege, if you like. Historically, does that kind of pressure, that type of strategy, does it change behavior or does it just harden it?
Sorry, your voice is not audible.
Can you hear me?
If you can repeat, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, if you can repeat your question.
No, I just wanted to get your analysis on this shift that President Trump has made from military action to this kind of economic siege that he's created. Well, historically, is that a tactic that ever works? Does it change behavior or does it just seem to harden it?
Honestly and frankly speaking, yes, it has changed the behavior of Americans, because when we study the history of America, so they did not achieve or they could not achieve anything militarily. Because if we take an example of Afghanistan, they remained over here for last 20 years. They did not achieve their kind of objectives, although they would deny it. And secondly, whenever war is waged by any country, any kind of superpower, it costs billions of dollars, and American economy at the moment is not even able to that's what that might be the thinking of the American administration, Trump administration. They cannot bear these kind of military conflicts. So that's the reason. That might be the reason that why Trump is kind of deviating its policy from the military shift, from the kind of military conflicts, putting the putting the troops on the grounds. They are trying to shift. They are trying to pressurize their adversaries through the economic kind of punishments. And even when we study these kind of economic sanctions on Iran, so Iranians have proved themselves that they can survive. They are still selling their oils to the Chinese, and they are still earning a lot of gaining a lot of support from Russian as well. So economic sanctions, no doubt, they have a huge impact, a negative impact. But the Iranians have proved that they will survive it. And Americans, I personally believe Americans know that the Iranian, despite having these kind of sanctions, Iranian will survive. But American government, Trump administration, will have to show something to their public as well. So I would say it's just for kind of a public consumption in that context.
Yeah, you're obviously speaking to us from Islamabad. Pakistan has maintained relations with Tehran and Washington. It's one of the reasons that the country has been so effective in the diplomacy that we've seen recently. What is the view on this confrontation at this moment from where you are in Islamabad?
Well, Islamabad is highly confident enough. Islamabad basically cached its foreign policy in terms of diplomacy, because Islamabad is having good relations with Washington, and at the same time Islamabad is having also brotherly, neighborly relations with Iran as well. Islamabad never wanted any kind of conflict with Iran. And at the same time, because the Iranians are kind of attacking on the Middle Eastern states, Pakistan has also a defense deal with Saudi Arabia as well. So obviously Islamabad will never go any kind of a war. Islamabad has always tried to mediate. The only reason, or there are two basic reasons why Islamabad basically started to mediate. Number one, Islamabad has a kind of the defense deal with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So obviously, if Iran wages any kind of attack on Saudi soil or on Saudi soil, Islamabad will have to intervene. And obviously, Islamabad did not want that. So this is the number one reason. And secondly, because Islamabad enjoys good relations with both of the states, so I think Islamabad has done a great job, and Islamabad is even looking forward whenever any kind of peace deal is kind of demanded, or whenever any kind of good office is demanded from Islamabad, Islamabad will always kind of take this initiative. And secondly, Islamabad is the kind of after this kind of mediation, Islamabad profile went high, and our adversary, our neighborly state, India, has always claimed that Islamabad is kind of a terror sponsoring country and whatever. So I think Islamabad has proved that Pakistan is a peace-loving nation. Pakistan always go two steps forward to bring peace, not only inside the region, but it works for the humanity. Islamabad basically has saved the millions of lives, and Islamabad has saved the kind of the region with a drastic effect. The war continues. So yes, Islamabad basically is, I personally believe, it did a tremendous job, and our government officials, our military officials, they actively and personally took the mediation, and I hope so that Islamabad is kind of achieved its objectives, because two times the ceasefire have been extended, and I don't think so that ceasefire would be kind of dismantled. It will continue, and the things are being worked in a back channel door as well.
Mustanza, we appreciate your analysis very much indeed. Thank you for joining us tonight from Islamabad.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at how the UAE's OPEC exit could reshape oil markets and Gulf power politics. Don't go away.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
Welcome back, you're watching Primetime. European airlines are facing their biggest challenge since the COVID-19 pandemic. The Iran conflict is driving up jet fuel prices and disrupting supplies ahead of the summer season. Well, the International Air Transport Association has warned that fuel shortages and possible rationing could hit Europe and Asia if the situation continues. The International Energy Agency said Europe's reserves are already running low. Airlines like Lufthansa, KLM and Virgin Atlantic have begun cutting routes and raising ticket prices. Disruption in the Strait of Hormuz and longer flight paths are adding to fuel demand. Well, analysts say recovery could take months. A major shift in the global energy order is taking place. The United Arab Emirates is leaving OPEC and OPEC Plus, opening a new chapter in Gulf oil politics. Well, it comes at a time of regional disruption and growing competition over market share and influence.
The United Arab Emirates says it will leave OPEC and OPEC Plus on May 1st, in one of the biggest recent departures from the Oil Producers Alliance. The country's energy minister said the decision was made after a review of the UAE's current and future production strategy and was not discussed with any other government. The move comes as Gulf oil exports face major disruptions linked to the Iran conflict. Producers have struggled to ship supplies through the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most important routes for crude oil and liquefied natural gas. That means the UAE's exit may have limited immediate market impact, but it could carry greater weight once Gulf exports normalize. The decision also fits into Abu Dhabi's longer-term push to expand its energy capacity and act with more independence.
The UAE has been expanding its oil production capacity significantly in recent years. We have saw that they are manufacturing new plants, new refinery, so they are expanding their capabilities. Well, it may want greater freedom to produce and export without strict OPEC quotas, because OPEC has a very strict quotas regarding the oil exports. So that's why UAE considered this act, and this would also allow it to maximize revenue as well as to strengthen its market position. It also aligns with its broader goal of pursuing an independent economic and foreign policy.
For OPEC, the departure removes a major Gulf producer with spare capacity at a time when the group is already under pressure from lower market share and rival suppliers. The move is also being closely watched by other members of the OPEC Plus alliance. Russia says that while it respects the UAE's decision, it wants the alliance to remain intact.
It is a sovereign decision by the United Arab Emirates. We treat this with respect. We welcome statements from Abu Dhabi that the Emirates will continue to take a responsible stance in energy markets and pursue bilateral coordination. Given our very constructive and friendly relations with Abu Dhabi, we of course count that highly productive, constructive and effective contacts with the United Arab Emirates will continue.
When asked if OPEC Plus would continue functioning, Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov said it was important for the alliance to keep going.
This is a very important area of work, especially under current conditions when energy markets are, to put it mildly, turbulent. This format, OPEC Plus, makes it possible to significantly reduce such volatility in energy markets and helps to stabilize them.
The move by the UAE could deepen the rift with Saudi Arabia. Abu Dhabi has increasingly pursued its own path across the Middle East and Africa, while strengthening ties with the United States and Israel.
Joining us now is Kostas Geropoulos, Director of Energy and Climate at NE Global Media, to look at what the UAE's decision to leave OPEC could mean for oil markets and the wider political balance in the Gulf. Kostas, always great to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. UAE leaving OPEC then, how big a moment is this, and what actually changes now?
Well, Guy, it's really a big moment in the sense that, the UAE has been a member for over 60 years and has been a major oil and gas producer in the region. However, now the UAE is looking at its evolution of its energy sector. I think that it's also, seeing forward in its long-term strategy. And at this point, and especially after the latest developments in the Strait of Hormuz and the situation in the Middle East, I think this is kind of a decision long time coming. Also, the UAE has not been very happy with the reaction from its other OPEC members, especially Saudi Arabia. I think that it has seen that it hasn't gotten the support that it needed, and especially after the latest actions have damaged its energy sector, and it doesn't want to be constrained by OPEC and its decisions on production quotas. I mean, I think that it wanted to take this time to restore its energy sector, and it wants to plan its own marketing strategy without playing essentially second fiddle to Saudi Arabia. And in this case, I think that it's not. I mean, it has been discussed before, but I think this time the time has come. And if you look at the yes, I can.
And do you think, Kostas, that this is ultimately about production freedom? Abu Dhabi spent years building up capacity. Is that something they've been thinking about for years, that they really just want to kind of pump on their own terms, so to speak, and this crisis has now given them the catalyst to take that action?
Yeah, absolutely. The market fundamentals have changed. So they don't want to be restricted by Saudi Arabia and the other OPEC members. And they want to produce and make their own deals. I mean, I saw today that they've been already talking to Qatar, and the minister has been discussing bilateral agreements and the future of of production deals. So I think this is it meets the UAE's goals, and maybe it's signaling the end of OPEC as we know it. As it's definitely a blow to the cartel.
During the drone strikes in the UAE and of course in Qatar, Bahrain, other countries, we spoke to a number of business leaders, residents there, and people were understandably really shaken up by what was taking place. Do you think that some of this is also about a political positioning, a way of trying to ensure that sort of thing just can't happen again?
Yes, and I mean, there have been tensions with Saudi Arabia as well, politically, and with bin Salman. And I think the UAE and Saudi Arabia have seen a different kind of strategy in terms of geopolitically, and I mean with the situation in Sudan and in the area. I think that they have different kind of policies. I think, and also I saw in your report earlier that you mentioned Moscow. I mean, I think that Russia at this point, this production is producing close to capacity, and it's kind of even back in 2016 with shale gas, it really needed OPEC. But I think at this stage now, even though they made statements saying they support OPEC, I think they also will stand with the UAE in terms of future policies and alliances. And also across the Atlantic, I think that's also music to the ears to President Donald Trump, who essentially, I mean, when he addressed OPEC as a cartel, I mean, essentially, he doesn't look. I mean, their policy of trying to drive up prices. I mean, that's something that was not welcome in the U.S. and by the current administration. So I think that at this point, OPEC is losing the power that it used to have.
And Saudi Arabia, as we all know, has long been at the centre of Gulf oil policy. Do you think that the UAE is now making much more of an overt competitive challenge to that leadership? And how far do you think that competition could escalate?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. The UAE had been playing second fiddle to Saudi Arabia and bin Salman. So essentially, Saudi Arabia was kind of dictating its own policy, and the other OPEC members were following. Also, don't forget that we have OPEC Plus. So OPEC, has been including other producers as well. So which have been following the OPEC's decision, but on the other hand, it's been more of a broader alliance. So in this case, the UAE will have more freedom to pursue individual deals and essentially, look at the market fundamentals and dictate its own policy. And we've seen that also from Al Jaber, from the even in terms of renewable energy policy. I mean, the UAE is following a very much active, even though it's a major hydrocarbon producer, it's also a major player, and Masdar is also in renewables. So it doesn't see OPEC as a major, it doesn't want to be constrained, anyone is dictate its own policy in oil and gas, and also do its own policy in renewables. So, I mean, the OPEC is just focusing so much on oil price and in terms of, the revenues, that it doesn't take into consideration as much the individual needs of the countries. So I think in this case, UAE can be a leader, and maybe other countries will follow.
And Kostas, do you see this decision as purely an Emirati calculation, or do you think possibly there could have been external influences, perhaps if not influence, then perhaps encouragement from some of the bigger actors, China, the US, others behind the scenes?
I think that definitely they have taken into consideration. I don't think they just this decision came out of the blue. I think that they have tested the waters, and I think that they probably have talked to their counterparts. So once this announcement came, because it's like May 1st, right? I mean, it's like at the end of the week, they're going to be out. So clearly they have already arranged, and we saw, as I mentioned earlier, we saw that the meeting between the Qatar and the UAE, I don't think that was chance. I mean, it was today. It was like one day after the announcement. And, as you mentioned, the US and China, I mean, the China wants, they're looking further once the strait opens. They want to be exporting as much as they can to Asia and to the other markets, and not be constrained by OPEC.
Kostas, we always appreciate your analysis on Primetime. Thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at how the 3C Summit is reshaping energy routes and strategic partnerships across Central and Eastern Europe. Don't go away.
The global defense industry plays a vital role in ensuring national security. In Turkey, companies in this sector strengthen domestic production and enhance military independence.
ISA-based radar, Murat radar. This is fully digital radar. This is new for world. Aselsan today, Turkish technology leader and global technology provider.
Yaptığınız atışa hazır. 3, 2, 1, ateş. Hedef imha edildi.
I'm Nuray Mustafa. This is One on One.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. AnewZ is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on AnewZ.
Unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent.
Hello, I'm Jay. That challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabon. One important note to fears. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on the 8th of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul for AnewZ.
A warm welcome back wherever you're watching Primetime. Energy security and regional connectivity are at the centre of the 3Cs Initiative Summit as leaders gather in Dubrovnik. With new US-backed energy deals and fresh infrastructure commitments, the summit is increasingly shaping how Central and Eastern Europe plans its future supply routes and strategic partnerships.
The 3Cs Initiative Summit is now underway in the Croatian city of Dubrovnik, bringing together leaders from across Central and Eastern Europe and several strategic partners. The two-day event, which kicked off Tuesday, is aimed at enhancing cooperation among countries located between the Baltic, Adriatic, and Black Seas. Launched in 2016, the 3Cs initiative seeks to bolster north-south connectivity in areas such as transport, energy infrastructure, and digital networks. The summit comes amid stepped-up efforts to diversify energy supplies and reduce reliance on traditional routes. On Tuesday, U.S. firms signed a raft of major deals with Balkan countries taking part in the summit, expanding Washington's regional energy footprint and supporting artificial intelligence development. Speaking at the summit, U.S. Energy Secretary Chris Wright said the agreements, collectively worth billions of dollars, reflect what he described as a new era of cooperation with Central and Eastern Europe. Officials say the raft of agreements is expected to strengthen energy security and accelerate regional infrastructure development. The United States is taking part in the 3Cs summit as a strategic partner, along with Turkey, Germany, Japan, and Spain. On Tuesday, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan met Borjana Cristo, head of the Council of Ministers of Bosnia and Herzegovina, as part of a series of bilateral meetings held on the summit's sidelines. Analysts say the summit could play a key role in shaping future energy corridors and supply chains across the region. This is Adam Morrow for AnewZ in Istanbul, Turkey.
Well, joining us now from Dubrovnik is Peter Wojcik, an analyst from the Blue Europe Foundation, where the 3Cs Initiative Summit is underway, to help us unpack what this gathering could mean for Europe's energy future and the wider strategic picture. Peter, good to see you there. Thank you for joining us. This began as a project about roads, rail and energy, didn't it? But it's now grown into something much bigger politically.
Hello, thank you for the invitation. As a nature of the 3Cs initiative, this format was created in 2015 and it has been covered three main pillars such as transport, energy and digitalization. Years by years it has become as a format that is much more than infrastructural cooperation in these listed branches. And for example, it includes not only transport, energy, and digitalization, but also soft power dimension and also political cooperation. As an analyst, I observed that one of the positive outcome of the evolution of the 3Cs is that some countries who at the beginning of the format were a bit skeptical, like Latvia, Slovenia and Slovakia, but comparing these times to the current situation, we can observe that these countries are more for the 3Cs initiative, they are more follower. And particularly when we see at the example of Slovakia, that this country was very distant from the 3Cs initiative, from its different pillars. And this year, Slovakia has decided to organize the next 3Cs Summit and Business Forum in 2027, which will happen probably in Bratislava. Yes, 3Cs initiative is something like more than infrastructural cooperation. It is it becomes more and more collaboration format between people, Free Seas is more and more popular as an idea.
Yes.
Of course, Free Seas initiative has some maybe not drawbacks but challenges, and there are some weaker points of cooperation that the factors which can be much more developed, but as an analyst, an observator of the Free Seas, I see a huge progress related to the widely cooperation in the region.
Huge progress indeed, Peter. I mean, energy is clearly a big focus this year, isn't it? Is the real battle now, do you think, about supply or about controlling the routes that bring it into Europe?
When it comes to the energy dimension of the Free Seas initiative, as you said, that it is true that energy was one of three main pillars within the Croatian presidency in the Free Seas initiative. I cannot define it as a battle. My interpretation is that Croatia very focused on the energy pillar, and this country within the current Free Seas Initiative Business Summit and Business Forum introduced a lot of perspectives, not only of Croatian state located in the Adriatic region, but also like my country, Poland, on the Baltic Sea, and also all different Free Seas members, and not only. As I saw and I observed from the panels that Croatia take a big prioritize very much the trans-border cooperation, cross-border cooperation. Sorry, it is that it was this word with cross-border was listed much times during the panels, particularly on energy ones. And it was listed that by the expert that with no interconnectors, the Free Seas, the project will not develop, and it is not I think rivalry, and the representative of different states emphasize that energy is more no rival but coherent aspect of the Free Seas cooperation, and not only Croatia on southern part of the region, but also Poland, Lithuania, and Estonia and other states could benefit from the different Free Seas energy projects.
Mr. Wojciech, we appreciate your analysis very much indeed. Thank you for joining us tonight. Okay, after the break, we'll check in with our correspondents around the globe. Do stay with us. On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption. Welcome to AnewZ, unfiltered news and analysis from the region and beyond. From Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent.
Hello, I'm Jay. That challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabala. Hi, Candy. One important note to fears. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on the 8th of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kyiv, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent, Almaty, Kazakhstan, Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul for AnewZ.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. Young voices are stepping into the global climate conversation as the Youth Forum on UN Global Goals 2026 opens in Istanbul for the first time. With COP31 high on the agenda, the forum is focusing on how the next generation can help shape climate policy, cooperation and sustainable development. Nuray Mustafa has more from Istanbul.
The Youth Forum on UN Global Goals 2026 is being held for the first time in Istanbul, bringing together young people from around the world to engage in important discussions on sustainable development, leadership and global cooperation. This year, the main focus of the forum is directed towards the COP31 climate change agenda, with discussions centered on joint approaches to addressing climate-related challenges. Within the COP31 framework, the key objectives include reducing national carbon emissions, strengthening climate adaptation strategies, and ensuring the active participation of young people in these processes. The choice of Istanbul as the host city is of particular significance. Istanbul has historically served as a bridge between Europe and Asia, making it a strategic hub for international cooperation and dialogue. Hosting discussions on a global issues such as climate change in this setting further enhances the exchange of ideas among young participants from different regions and supports the development of shared solutions.
For the young people, for example, in Ukraine, of course.
United Nations must do something to implement its charter, which is the base of the United Nations. So, without implementing the UN Charter, United Nations cannot achieve these goals, and it will not be good to make a false promise, incorrect promise to the youth.
Reformulating the framework.
The first panel session of the day, titled Leadership and Global Cooperation, Advancing the Sustainable Development Goals, a Road to COP31, brought together experienced leaders and young delegates to discuss climate diplomacy, international partnerships and progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals. This was followed by the workshop Youth as Peacemakers, where participation received training aimed at developing skills in conflict resolution and mediation. In the afternoon, the panel discussion Policy and Innovation, Effective Strategies for CDG Implementation explored innovative approaches and accountability mechanisms for achieving the CDGs with contributions from both experts and young participation. Overall, the forum seeks to empower young people to take a more active role in international cooperation and to contribute innovative solutions to pressing global challenges. Nuray Mustafa, Hajiye for AnewZ, Istanbul, Turkey.
The Georgian Orthodox Church has taken its first step towards choosing a new patriarch, the figure who will not only lead the faithful, but shape the country's moral and at times political direction. Well, 3 names are now in the race, but behind the numbers, there is tension, calculation, and a fragile balance of power. Nini Nikolashvili has more.
The Holy Synod of the Georgian Orthodox Church has selected 3 candidates for the Patriarchate following a secret ballot attended by 38 out of 39 members. Metropolitan Shio Mujeri emerged as the frontrunner with 20 votes, exactly the minimum needed to win in the next stage. His rivals Metropolitan Yobak Yashvili and Metropolitan Grigoli Berbichashvili received 7 votes each. At first glance, it looks like a strong lead, but the reality is far more delicate. 20 votes is not a comfortable margin. It is the narrowest possible majority. Nearly half of the Synod did not support Shio, meaning that his position remains vulnerable ahead of the expanded assembly, where again 39 voters will decide. Losing even 1 vote could cost him the Patriarchate. The vote also followed internal friction. Disagreements over candidate eligibility led to some figures being excluded, while debates inside the Synod revealed divisions that were later formally closed without full consensus. This election comes after the death of Ilya II, a towering figure who led the church for decades and became the spiritual father of the nation, with influence reaching deep into public and political life. For many, his legacy still defines the church. Shio, who worked closely alongside Ilya II for years, appears to benefit from that legacy. His support reflects not only his own position, but also continuity with the previous patriarch. But continuity does not guarantee unity. If elected, the next patriarch will inherit not a consolidated church, but one where influence is shared, alliances matter, and authority may need to be rebuilt step by step and vote by vote. Nini Nikolashvili, Tbilisi, AnewZ.
Athletes from across Europe and Central Asia are competing at the President Cup 2026 International Regatta, where several medals have already been awarded in a competition marking the anniversary of Azerbaijan's national leader, Heydar Aliyev. AnewZ's Ilknur Sabdebayov has more.
The first medals have been awarded at the International President Cup 2026 Regatta. Competition in Sugovshan featured races in single kayak and canoe events. Athletes from Moldova, Uzbekistan and Georgia won gold medals. Azerbaijan secured 1 silver medal through Elmurad Hajizadeh, who competed in the 2008-2009 age category.
We had already started preparing for this competition back in November. And in every training session, this race was on our minds. Winning a medal on our land that had been liberated from occupation gives a person a great sense of pride. And I think every athlete deserves to feel this emotion.
I can't even describe the joy and how much time I waited for this moment, and I finally got the gold. This year, my main priority was to win this race, and I finally won, and it was a crazy race.
Athletes delivered strong performances, with the fastest progressing through the heats to the finals. The regatta has brought together more than 100 athletes from all around the world, including the Czech Republic, Georgia, Germany, Greece, Turkey, Ukraine, Uzbekistan and more. The competition began on April 27 at the Sarsang Reservoir in Aghdara and will continue through May 1st. İlknur Seydemirova with Zohrab Shirinov reports from Sugovshan, Azerbaijan for AnewZ.
Tensions along the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan are rising again after a fresh wave of shelling and airstrikes in eastern Afghanistan. With civilian casualties mounting and diplomatic protests now underway, the fragile security situation between the two neighbours is once again under sharp focus. Tamim Bahis reports now from Kabul.
According to OCHA's latest situation update, the level of fighting between Afghanistan and Pakistan is now lower than it was in March. But hostilities are still continuing, mainly in border provinces. OCHA says that between the 19th and the 21st of April, mortar rounds were fired into Afghan territory, damaging a school, a health facility and a telecommunication pylon in the Dangam district of Kunar province. But the situation escalated again on the 27th of April, when mortar shelling and airstrikes hit Asadabad city as well as Sarkane and Marawara districts of Kunar. According to officials at Asadabad hospital, at least 7 people were killed and 79 others were injured, including women and children. Meanwhile, Afghanistan's foreign ministry summoned Pakistan's ambassador in Kabul and handed over a protest note condemning what it called a violation of Afghan airspace and attacks on civilians and public facilities in Kunar. At the same time, Afghanistan's foreign minister met with the UK Special Envoy for Afghanistan, discussing the recent Afghanistan-Pakistan situation, Doha meetings and other issues. The UK envoy expressed sympathy with victims of the recent attacks and pledged continued humanitarian assistance and further engagement with Afghanistan. Tamim Bahis in Kabul, AnewZ.
Pakistan is rejecting accusations of cross-border attacks into Afghanistan as tensions between the two neighbours flare again along this shared border. Hira Mustafa reports.
In response to the escalation, Afghan authorities summoned Pakistan's Charge d'Affaires in Kabul, formally protesting what they describe as cross-border strikes by Pakistani forces on civilian areas and public infrastructure. The Taliban administration says Pakistani forces fired mortars and rockets into populated areas, including a university in the Kunar province, claiming dozens of civilians were wounded, including women and children. It has strongly condemned the strikes, calling them a violation of Afghanistan's sovereignty and international law. Pakistan has rejected these allegations, calling them a blatant lie. Officials in Islamabad insist Afghanistan continues to provide safe havens to militant groups responsible for attacks inside Pakistan. Pakistan's Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi has also condemned what he described as unprovoked aggression from the Afghan side, while praising the military's response to security threats along the border. Kabul denies these claims and accuses Pakistan of failing to manage its own internal security challenges. The latest escalation has drawn concern from international humanitarian organizations, including the United Nations Assistance Mission in Afghanistan and OCHA, both of which have stressed that civilians and civilian infrastructure must be protected at all times under international humanitarian law. The renewed hostilities come despite recent diplomatic engagement. Earlier this month, Pakistan, China and Afghanistan held talks in Urumqi aimed at de-escalating tensions and improving coordination along the shared border. Islamabad and Kabul had agreed to a temporary ceasefire over Eid in March, following appeals from Saudi Arabia, Qatar and Turkey to reduce tensions. However, Pakistan's military says it will continue targeted operations against what it describes as militant groups operating from Afghan territory until, as it states, safe havens across the border are fully dismantled. Hira Mustafa for AnewZ, Islamabad.
Kyrgyzstan is pushing back after being swept into the European Union's latest sanctions package against Russia, with banks, crypto firms and export controls now under tighter scrutiny. The move marks a sharp escalation in Brussels' effort to close what it calls sanctions loopholes across Central Asia. Fariza Kalamazina sent us this report from Almaty.
The inclusion of Kyrgyz companies and banks in the European Union's 20th package of sanctions against Russia has triggered a sharp response from Bishkek. The country's Ministry of Foreign Affairs says it's puzzled by the decision, stressing that Kyrgyzstan's position has effectively been ignored despite ongoing dialogue with Brussels. Officials say the Kyrgyz side has consistently provided European partners with all requested documentation and detailed information on measures taken to address sanctions-related risks.
However, according to the Foreign Ministry, this did not influence the final outcome, under which several Kyrgyz entities were effectively accused of facilitating sanctions circumvention. The package was adopted on April 23rd, making the first time Kyrgyzstan has been officially designated as a jurisdiction with a high risk of sanctions evasion. Among those affected are two banks, Kiramet Bank and Capital Bank of Central Asia, which will face restrictions on access to European capital markets and payment systems starting mid-May. Bishkek registered company Tengri Coin, which operates the Mir crypto exchange, has also been added to the list. EU officials believe it may be linked to transactions involving a stable coin associated with Russia's Pромsvязьbank, potentially enabling the bypassing of financial restrictions. Another set of measures targets export controls. Kyrgyzstan has been added to a list of countries considered high risk for the re-export of certain technologies, including metalworking machinery and telecommunications equipment. And according to the European Commission, imports of these goods from EU to Kyrgyzstan surged by nearly 800% in 2025 compared to pre-war levels, while their exports to Russia increased by around 1,200%. Following consultations with Kyrgyz authorities, European experts concluded that existing control mechanisms were insufficient, reinforcing Brussels' decision to tighten oversight and expand restrictions. Farisa Kalimurzina, Almaty, AnewZ.
The Deputy Prime Ministers of Azerbaijan and Armenia met in Armenia for the latest round of border delimitation talks. Well, the sides agreed on draft instructions governing how delimitation work, mapping and documentation will be carried out. These texts will now be submitted to both governments for approval. The meeting also reviewed technical aspects of the process, with further talks to be scheduled. Okay, let's take a look at some other top news stories making the headlines now. Well, with just over 40 days until the 2026 FIFA World Cup begins, Gianni Infantino is insisting football must remain inclusive amid calls from allies of Donald Trump to replace Iran in the tournament. For now, FIFA says Iran remains part of the competition.
Thank you. With the major tournament now just over 40 days away, FIFA's president, Gianni Infantino, is stressing the importance of inclusion during the upcoming World Cup. His comments follow a suggestion by a special envoy to US President Donald Trump that Italy replace Iran at the tournament.
To all of you, it's my commitment to all of you as well is that FIFA, and you are all FIFA, all of AFC is FIFA, the whole FIFA Congress is FIFA, all of you, all of us, we have to continue to build fields, to build competitions, to build bridges, to not let anyone behind. And when the situations are even more complicated and even more challenging, well, then we have just to work even harder to make sure that adventures as the ones football gives us, and we don't want to let anyone behind.
At this stage, however, Iran is still scheduled to participate in the competition. Despite ongoing tensions involving Iran, there has been no indication from FIFA that the lineup will change. As it stands, the only scenario in which Iran would not participate would be if the team chose to withdraw. Meanwhile, the expanded tournament will feature a record 9 teams from Asia.
And with this in mind, it is even more important that there are 9 representatives of AFC in the FIFA World Cup. Of course, a huge, huge record. 9 countries are participating in the FIFA World Cup.
The FIFA World Cup will be held across the United States, Canada and Mexico in June and July.
The ceasefire between Israel and Lebanon is under renewed strain after fresh Israeli strikes in southern Lebanon killed 5 people, including rescue workers. With military operations continuing on both sides, concerns are growing that the truce is becoming increasingly fragile.
2 Israeli strikes in southern Lebanon have killed 5 people on Tuesday, including 3 rescuers who were hit while responding to the initial attack, according to officials. The second strike in Mejdal Zun trapped the rescue workers under rubble. 2 Lebanese soldiers were also wounded. Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam condemned the strikes as a new and blatant war crime committed by Israel. Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says Israel has destroyed what he called a massive Hezbollah terrorist tunnel as fighting continues despite a US brokered ceasefire. Explosions and plumes of smoke were seen across the region, while evacuation warnings were issued to residents in several towns.
Today we blew up a massive Hezbollah terrorist tunnel. We are destroying their terrorist infrastructure, we are killing scores of terrorists, and we are not done yet. We are operating within the security zone south of the Litani, north of the Litani, in the Bekaa Valley, and in northern Lebanon. A few weeks ago I gave a directive for a special project to eliminate the drone threat. It will take time, but we will blow that up too.
Residents continue to search through the rubble after Tuesday's strikes. In the village of Jibchit, destroyed buildings and debris show the scale of damage left behind as families sift through what remains of their homes.
We just heard the strike. No sound before. Nothing at all. We didn't hear anything but the boom, the strike. Stones fell on us inside. We were sitting in that room there, by the door. We were inside and they said there was a ceasefire, so we gathered ourselves and came here. We thought to check on the houses. We found those destroyed, the damaged, and this building, most of it is gone.
Despite the pause, clashes continue, with Israel carrying out strikes and Hezbollah launching drones and rockets. According to the Lebanese Health Ministry, more than 2,500 people have been killed since early March, highlighting the fragility of the ceasefire.
Ukraine's expanding drone campaign is putting growing pressure on Russia's energy infrastructure, with a major strike triggering a fresh fire at the Tuapse oil refinery on the Black Sea. The latest attack highlights Kyiv's strategy of targeting oil facilities that it says help fund Moscow's war effort, while raising new concerns over environmental damage and export disruption.
Thick black smoke rose over the Tuapse oil refinery after a Ukrainian drone strike triggered a major fire at the Black Sea facility. Local officials said the refinery had been hit for the 3rd time this month, with residents from nearby streets ordered to evacuate. More than 160 firefighters were deployed, as emergency crews worked in what regional authorities described as extremely difficult conditions. Officials said no casualties were reported, but residents were urged to stay indoors, keep windows closed, and limit time outside because of smoke in the air. Earlier strikes on the same refinery caused an oil spill in the Black Sea, while residents reported black rain and an oily residue across parts of the city. The Kremlin accused Kiev of targeting oil facilities used for export operations, and warned that such strikes risk further destabilizing global energy markets. Russian President Vladimir Putin said attacks on energy facilities were becoming more frequent and could have serious environmental consequences.
Drone strikes against civilian infrastructure are becoming more frequent. The latest example involves strikes on energy facilities in Tuapse, which could potentially lead to serious environmental consequences. However, the governor has reported that he is on the scene, or at least was there a couple of hours ago, and it appears there are no serious threats. People are dealing with the challenges they face on the ground.
Ukraine's military confirmed the strike, saying the refinery was part of Russia's military and economic potential. President Volodymyr Zelensky vowed Wednesday to keep expanding Ukraine's strike range, citing a successful hit over 1,500 kilometers deep inside Russia. He described the move as a new stage in crippling Moscow's war funding. Meanwhile, Ukraine said Russian drones struck Kiev in daylight, injuring 2 people and damaging residential areas.
Mali's military leadership is under mounting pressure after coordinated insurgent attacks exposed fresh cracks in the country's security grip, with senior figures vowing retaliation and armed groups gaining ground in the north. The violence is raising new questions over stability and the role of Russian-backed forces.
Following a series of deadly insurgent attacks across Mali over the weekend, the country's military leader, Assimi Goïta, has vowed to neutralise those responsible. West Africa's Al-Qaeda affiliate and a Tuareg-dominated separatist group targeted Mali's main army base and an area near Bamako's airport. They also pushed Russian troops supporting government forces out of the strategic northern town of Kidal. Goïta said the situation is under control and promised to continue rebuilding the West African nation.
As I speak, security measures have been stepped up. The situation is under control and search and clear operations, intelligence gathering and security operations are continuing. No violence, no intimidation, and certainly no desperate attempts at destabilization will be able to reverse the course of our country. The rebuilding will continue and our sovereignty will be strengthened. Our people, standing tall and resilient as ever, will emerge from this ordeal.
The statement comes after meeting Russian officials, following an earlier statement from Moscow that it is seeking stability in the West African country. Malian Prime Minister Abdoulaye Maïga said the attacks were aimed at seizing power and dismantling the country's republican institutions.
What was the objective of this terrorist group? There were essentially three. One, to sow fear and doubt. We are not afraid, we will never doubt, and we will never be afraid. More than mere terrorist incidents, the enemy's objective was to seize power by dismantling the institutions of the Republic and putting an end to the process of rebuilding and building a new Mali.
The attacks, which led to the death of Defence Minister Sadio Kamara, have triggered a scramble for territory across Mali's vast desert north. This raises the prospect of significant gains by armed groups that have shown an increasing willingness to strike neighbouring countries and analysts say could eventually set their sights further afield.
The death toll in a train collision in Indonesia has risen to 15. Officials are now launching an investigation into the country's railway operator.
This was the moment two trains collided in a deadly crash in Indonesia on Monday. Authorities have widened their investigation, examining both the state railway operator and a taxi company following the accident. So far, at least 15 people have died. Officials say a taxi appears to have clipped a commuter train at a level crossing, causing it to stop on the tracks, where it was then struck by a long-distance service. Authorities say evaluations will now be done to improve future operations.
We and the relevant parties have carried out and are continuing to carry out internal and external evaluations. Internally, this involves how we improve or more firmly ensure operational aspects and, of course, safety, as well as coordination with external evaluations, including with the regulator and related parties. We also support the investigation process being conducted by the KNKT, which will later officially announce the causes and recommendations stemming from yesterday's accident.
Families of the victims have begun the painful process of burying their loved ones.
I don't know which carriage she was on. I only just saw her at the hospital. When I went to the East Bekasi station, I couldn't find her. I didn't know what had happened to her. And then her cousins told me she was at Mitra Keluarga Hospital. She was an active, sociable girl. She had friends everywhere. She had so many peers.
Officials say at least 91 passengers were injured in the incident and that all of those killed were women. Land transport accidents are common in Indonesia. A train collision in West Java province in 2024 killed 4 people and injured dozens.
And finally, the Walt Disney Company is reimagining some of its best-known songs through sign language in a project designed to make music more accessible to deaf audiences. Well, the new series created with Deaf West Theatre is offering a different way of experiencing animation through movement, emotion, and visual storytelling.
We don't talk about Bruno, no, no, no.
From We Don't Talk About Bruno,
I won't look too far ahead.
to The Next Right Thing and beyond. The performances are recreated using Deaf West Theatre artists, combining animation with real signed performances to open up a new way of experiencing music. For director Hiram Osmond, the project is deeply personal.
So this project, this was something I had floating around back in my head for a while. My father's deaf. Really, you go back to the inspiration of it. Growing up, I didn't really learn sign language and felt like kind of had a barrier connecting with my dad. And so this came about as a way to connect and bring down barriers, especially between Disney animation and the deaf community.
Know these stars above. The project challenges long-held assumptions about music in deaf audiences, something Deaf West Theatre says has never reflected reality.
Bigger than before.
People think that deaf people and music don't mix, but that's actually not true, and quite the opposite is true. Deaf people have been singing since day one. Since the beginning of recording sign language on film, you've had people signing songs like the Star-Spangled Banner.
Behind the scenes, each song went through a detailed process, translating lyrics into sign language, rehearsing with performers, and capturing every movement on camera before transforming it into animation. For Osmond, the collaboration has also opened new creative possibilities within the animation industry.
The crew itself was most asked to be on this project. There was just a passion for it. I don't know sign language, but this looks wonderful. I want to be involved. And I think along the process, again, with Deaf West and looking at and working with, people started to get it. I mean, look, I'm not fluent in the sign language, but I've come a long way, right, DJ? I've been learning. I understand a little bit more now.
Thank goodness. We looked at the original movie, we looked at the song many, many times. We looked at the lyrics and broke those down, and then we developed translations with the actors, and then marked those translations, rehearsed with the actors, came into the filming room, and then filmed each movement, each camera angle, and had to work through what works and what doesn't work on every shot. After that process, I have to be very thankful to Hiram to give me permission to give him so many notes.
The project took 4 years to develop and is now streaming on Disney+.
Great story. Well, that brings us to the end of Primetime for tonight, but please do join us again tomorrow for plenty more news and analysis. And from all of us here at AnewZ, thanks for watching.